Modern Horizons 3 is fully spoiled, and the Casting Commons Battle of the Bolts event has happened. Let's check it out. Hi guys, welcome back to Casting Commons, the show where we talk and discuss all things Pauper. I am your host Teasdale, and this is my co-host, the cryptic serpent himself, Reese.
Hello.
Before we start, guys, please do not forget to hit that like, subscribe, and follow button so you never miss an amazing upload from us. It also helps our algorithm and gets us great exposure. And it's a great way to support us for absolutely free. So, Paul, I think we've had a quiet week in Pauper, to be fair, for us. You reckon?
Not quite.
No?
Yeah, so I've obviously played quite a bit of Pauper this week. Before the obvious Battle for the Vault event, I played in F&M as well. I had a go with Apaz's latest hybrid walls list that we talked about, I think last week or the week before. Which was pretty fun. I enjoyed playing it. It didn't go massively well. I ended up running into a couple of bad matchups. Like Elves was the main one that just felt like if I don't draw Breath Weapon, it's unwinnable. And then even when I did draw Breath Weapon, the Elves player had a Dispel for my Breath Weapon. So that didn't go great. But I'll definitely be running it back because it does feel like a super fun deck, and there's a lot of support. I guess maybe more than you would expect, play to it. Because obviously the Cascade Walls part, it's just you just ramp and cast some bombs. But there's a lot of sequencing and how you play stuff that you have to figure out. So yeah, it's a pretty fun deck. I'll be giving that another go. And then obviously on Saturday we had our Battle for the Bolts event. I played Dredge for that one. I was testing out a few different tweaks to the normal Dredge list, some of which worked, some of which didn't. I'll probably change it for next time I play it. Overall, did pretty well. I ended up 5th, with my only losses, obviously, to 2 awkward matchups. One was Elves again, which is just my nemesis matchup, apparently. Which was actually very close. I did win one game with combo and Lotless Giants. And then the other game I got him to 8, and I had 2 trolls on the board, but he just went too wide. And too big with a Vanguard. And then the game 3, he just got 2 well wishes online and gained 90 life, and I was like, yeah, I can't deal that much damage. And my sideboard just was not fit for Elves at all. I had no Drowning Sorrows or Breath Weapons. So I basically just had no answers to anything he was doing. And then obviously the second match I lost was to yourself on Mogwarts. Again.
Spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler. The game 2 was pretty close. Obviously you had to basically rip the Putrid Goblin.
Yeah.
Because I had the
Coffin Purge.
But yeah, my sideboard once again wasn't really up to scratch for that matchup. I only had 2 Coffin Purges rather than 3 or 4, which I probably should have been on. But yeah, that especially game 1, that matchup basically feels unwinnable. Unless basically the Mogwarts player just doesn't draw anything and you just turn to make a troll and hit them 4 times. But yeah, it was a good fun overall, really good event. And sweet to see obviously the Newcastle guys come across on that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the best way I can describe it, it's definitely a great start for 10 for us, for sure. Obviously, it's our first ever event ran. Obviously, with West Coast Gamers support. We got fair numbers. Obviously, we had quite a few drop on the day, which is a bit unfortunate, but still, overall, a well-run event. Our TO definitely is above and beyond. And a lot of the people that came up for it were basically saying, why can't every event be like this good prizes? Which is definitely the case. It's always funny when I don't know about yourself, Reese, but whenever I go in, I walk into a city store or something like that to go, I'll have a look in here, see what product they've got and all that sort of stuff. I look in, I'm like, what the are these pricing? I turn around and walk out. I'm like, I am not looking in there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one seeing. Obviously, we've got the benefit of having Paul all the time as our TO. But one of the comments that I think Kieran made. Paul basically went round with a massive box of promos and just fired everyone like 2 or 3 promos each. And Kieran was like, I wish all TOs were this nice. It's like, oh, that's just normal.
Well, you don't get this at home.
yeah. Geek Retreat doesn't give you a promo. What's happening?
But yeah, good event, definitely. For me, obviously, I came out the woodwork on Friday. So for those that don't know, I very sporadically attend our local game store as of late.
Very infrequently.
Yes, very infrequent. Obviously, child and other things, and my general laziness all falter in that. But I came out the woodwork for Friday to help set up. But I was like, I might as well play some Pauper. So I played some Pauper on the Friday. Played Mogwarts. And then I don't even know what I versed on Friday. I actually can't even remember.
Solid F&M as well, to be fair. We had, 10 people down?
Yeah.
Which is nice.
It was a good number of F&M, I think. I can't remember what I played on Friday. It's all blurred into one. But I ended up going 3-0.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's really annoying me now what I've versed. But oh well.
I've got all the notes on here. I can tell you what was played. Me on Hybrid Walls, there was a Kuldotha and another. I think you played against another Mogwart, right?
Oh yeah, I played against another Mogwart mirror.
And then there was Corgates, Blue Red Scred, Elves, Infect, Cycle Storm, and Mono Blue Control.
So I versed Cycle Storm in round 1. And then I versed Mogwart in round 2. And then I didn't verse.
Was it not like Blue Red Scred?
Yeah, it might have been Blue Red.
Was it Michael on Blue Red Scred?
It might have been. It might have been Michael, to be fair, but I only thought I versed him on the Saturday. But yeah, so I ended up winning that thing, come 3-0. The F&M. And then I changed one card for Saturday. And then I ended up doing quite well in the Swiss, to be fair. I was quite impressed by the Swiss. I ended up going 5-0, only dropping one game against Elves, which got a really fast start game 1. And then game 2, just Crackland Shaman, hard wins pretty much most of that. Which was good. I versed quite a lot of control decks. So I versed Jeskai Ephemerate, Blue Red Scred, Elves Dredge was my 5 matchups. And to be fair, you want to be, as much as they are long and windy, you want to be versing the control decks, which especially control decks like that where they don't have any real pressure. So it really does let you sort your hand out and understand what you need to beat. So I generally don't mind versing those sort of matchups all day long. Ephemerate's one of the decks that can definitely get from under you with the Ephemerate looping. But yeah, it's definitely a solid deck, and I really do recommend people A, start taking the deck seriously, and B, giving it a go.
Mogwarts or Jeskai Ephemerate?
Well, no, not Jeskai Ephemerate, Mogwarts. Jeskai Ephemerate's a joke. But yeah, I really do enjoy the deck, and it always baffles me that you rarely see anyone else bar Hamuda doing well with it. It absolutely baffles me because the deck is incredibly strong. I think my list itself is like 3, maybe 4 cards different from what I played in the Northern Pauper Open. I think I cut the 2 Demand Answers from my Northern Pauper Open list and ran 1 extra Fanatical Offering and then Pilferer or something. Like that's the main deck change, and then I cut 2 Weathers and put like 2 Cast into Fires into the side. Like it's not much different. It's a solid deck, and I think it'd be interesting to see how it competes in Modern Horizons 3 metagame with the addition of Thraben Charm. It's a card that I'm actually quite scared of. But, it'd be interesting. Because not only is it a removal, it's also graveyard hit as well. So it'd be
I suppose the big thing with that is it doesn't really fit in that many decks, though. Like, it maybe makes your White Weenie matchup now pretty rough. But apart from that, like, it's not. It might go in Corgates, I guess, if they want to go wide. But it doesn't just, like, audible into loads of decks, which I suppose is good for you.
Yeah, like my main one is it might make the Jeskai Ephemerate matchup a bit worse.
Mm.
But because obviously they'll have the access to not only cast it but Ephemerate then cast it again.
Mm.
But yeah, it's interesting for sure. And I'll be interested to see how it competes. But I do really like the deck. Obviously I'm not going to go into what happened after the Swiss, but yeah, it was a good weekend. Sweet. Good weekend overall.
Well, we will go into
not right
what
now.
happened after.
Not right now.
After the challenge.
Not right now. Sorry. Anything else?
No. It was a good weekend for Pauper.
Yeah. Moving on to some tournament news. Just quick shout out, obviously, the Monarch event in Sheffield. That is on I believe it's the 29th of June. I will put the ticket link or the event link, the Facebook link, in the description of the show notes. So you can check it out. It is on the Saturday, I believe. And it'll be a great run event at Patriot Games in Sheffield, I believe. Yeah. Unfortunately, we will not be attending as we both have prior commitments.
Yeah, I was planning to go and then was reminded that I have a tattoo on that day, so I cannot go.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm not in this county, so all good fun. Other than that, obviously don't forget to check out Pauper Dan. He will be retweeting events like crazy, as he generally does. There's a lot of them in the UK, so it's great to obviously follow him and just keep an eye on all the events if you are interested in attending any UK events. And finally, don't forget to check out Badger Badger's LPI International League, which is on the 20th of July and is the only one to be in England to feed Paupergeddon. So I highly recommend checking that out as well. Moving on to some news. Some unfortunate news, I guess, is a bad way to start, but we'll get it out the way. Geek Retreat Leeds announced this morning that that they are closing due to unfortunate circumstances with stock and things like that. Is what the posters said, and they are closing effectively immediately. They're basically just not opening up. So I think last night was their prompt news, and then that's it. They're shutting up shop.
Yeah, it's a rough one.
It's a very for those that don't know, it's obviously got quite a big scene in Leeds for the Pauper community. It's obviously where all the Pauper weeklies are all ran, and it is where the Northern Pauper Open is ran. So it's going to be a big miss. Obviously, it's a big size to run a 64-player event. So yeah, obviously we'll update you when we do have any more information on what is happening with the Northern Pauper Open, what the plans are, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, pretty hard-hitting news, unfortunately. Moving on to more exciting news, I guess. Modern Horizons 3 has officially been spoiled, and we're going to highlight two of our favourite cards each, or cards that were pretty interesting for us, for Pauper, and then we'll obviously share our overall favourite card for play and all that sort of stuff. We have, similar to my video, we have similarly excluded Cranial Ram because it seems pointless to include it in this list because it's either going to be pre-banned or it's going to be obviously broken. So, seems pointless to mention that. So, do you want to start off with your first card?
Yeah. This set's pretty deep for Pauper, to be fair. I was surprised by how many cards that are just like, oh, this could see play, or this is a sideboard card, or this might start a new archetype.
Yeah.
As well as like a bunch of just like reprints, like deep analysis and just like Pauper stables like that. So it's looking pretty sweet. My first pick of a card that I thought was pretty interesting and could see a bit of play is a Cursed Marauder. So it's a 1 and a black for a 2/1 zombie warrior. And when it ETBs, each player sacrifices a non-token creature. So obviously just essentially Edict on Legs. It's I believe the cheapest Edict on Legs that we've had in Pauper, like Fleshbag and all that, all cost 3.
I think so,
yeah. But the most relevant part is that it is a non-token creature that it specifies. So in particular against something like Bogles, they'll often have like a warrior off the
solid
whatever the enchantment is, the cartouche, yeah, or like a plant insect token off the instant
Vitality Charm
to like to play around edicts, but this just like stops that completely and just hits the main creature. Similarly to like Murmur Mystic decks, or like Terror decks that have Murmur Mystic in, it just eats the better guy and not one of the birds. I'm not sure where it goes in particular, but it's maybe just replaces edicts in the sideboard if they are required in the meta, or might go in a main deck of some description.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. There's probably maybe food for thought for me is obviously Black White Blade exists, where obviously it's trying to bounce a lot of random things, and this could potentially be like an aggressive version of that, or like in a Black White Ephemerate deck where you can obviously utilize this, Core Skyfish or other cards that give you value. So there is probably a place that this could see in something like that. And again, being that the cheaper version of it is obviously pretty good going.
Yeah, I think for me it's just that non-token line. If it was just each player sacrifices a creature, it's like, well, yeah, that's fine. It's probably not as good as like Titan Blade or Edicts in most decks. But yeah, the non-token rider is pretty important.
Yeah.
And definitely is what pushes it a bit.
Poor Bogles. Poor Bogles. It had Extractor Confession last set, and now it's got this.
Yeah.
It's always fighting an uphill battle. But yeah, definitely a sweet card, and I'll be interested to see where this does end up seeing play, because it's definitely a sweet one, being the cheapest flesh bag, and there's a lot of decks that I've tried to utilize, like Flesh Bag Marauder in the past, so definitely a cool one. My next one is Malevolent Rumble, which is a card that initially escaped me when I did my set review, sort of. Which is 1 and a green. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a permanent card from among them into your hand, and then the rest into your graveyard. And then you create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn token with sacrifice, add a colorless. My initial thought in this is there is a chance that this could replace Commune with the Spirit, or even go in maybe as an addition or some sort of 2/2 split or whatever. In Bogles, because it is a Commune with Spirit that can get a land, it can get an enchantment, and it can get a creature, but it does cost 2 mana, so it does cost 1 more. But then, if you do have the 2, it does effectively reduce the cost because you get a spawn token in a roundabout way. So it is interesting. I also do think it has potential to go in Tortured Existence, as much as pretty much everything else does in Tortured Existence. Yeah, a card that has a guy, gets a permanent. Getting a permanent is the relevant thing, and it's definitely an interesting card for sure.
It's a weird one for me. Like, obviously it's 2 mana, but sort of reduces itself because it makes that spawn token. But like, if you looked at this card, if it was just like a single green and just didn't have that spawn on the end, it would probably be like Snap included in a bunch of decks.
Yeah.
But just the fact that it's 2 mana, like the spawn doesn't offset it enough for me off the top of my head, like to make it the card you want to be on.
Yeah.
It's like so close. I could see it maybe getting like test run, like you say, in Bogles and such. But it's like I don't know. It's a weird one.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if it did find its way into Bogles, but I also wouldn't be surprised if on testing it isn't good enough. Because the big thing about Commune is it doesn't hit a creature, so you can't really keep hands with no creatures.
Yeah.
Because you just usually end up getting further away from them because you end up bottom half a dozen of them with your Communes. Yeah. So where this obviously being able to find creatures and also giving you a pseudo protection, assuming that they're not playing the Accured Marauder, but is pretty good. But it'd be interesting to see if that does end up making its way there.
My second pick is probably like the second most hyped on card of the set, which is weird. It's Baskin Brood Scale. So it's 1 green for a 2/2 Eldrazi lizard that is devoid, so it has no colour. It has Adapt, also for 1 green, for 1. And then it's got whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Baskin Brood Scale, you may create a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn that sacks for a colourless. So yeah, there's a lot of like combo potential with this card. I think the main one is it Sadistically, the enchantment, is a single black enchantment that whenever a creature dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on the enchanted creature. So essentially, you play this, put a Sadistically on it, adapt it, and then get an infinitely big guy. A lot of people, when this was spoiled, was like, "Oh, this is the card that's going to be banned in Pauper." I don't think that.
No.
But I do think it's quite more of an interesting fair card in something like on a green Stompy. Like playing this and then being able to adapt it and just get like some little guys, or put Hunger of the Howl pack on it or something like that. Might be an interesting tool for Stompy. I think the Sadistic Glee deck will obviously probably become a thing. I don't know. I don't think it'll be a high tiered thing, more of like a bit of a meme. Because at the end of the day, it basically dies to anything. Like you can bolt it in response, or you can Doomblade it, or you can cast down it, like whatever you want. It's gonna die to.
My main thing with the combo is, like, people have said, oh, it's Splinter Twin, it's a 2-card combo, but it's a combo that doesn't win the game straight away. So you combo off, you either have to wait a turn for your guy to be able to attack, which is hard enough anyways, or you add a card to it to make your infinite powered, infinite colourless mana combo. Then it's a 3-card combo, so then you're even weaker. And then
I think even more than that, you have to actually activate it as well. Like you can't just go like turn 1 land, turn 2 this Sadistically or something. Like that does nothing. Like you have to be able to have a guy die to kick it off.
Yeah, it is obviously you need something to either put a counter on it or to make a guy die, and it just gets more and more cards that are in this list, and then you've already got cards that are bad by themselves, and you want to mitigate that as much as possible. Like, you don't want a bunch of writer consumptions in your deck, so to combo off and kill them instantly, because you're just gonna end up with a bunch of writer consumptions in your hand when you're just sitting there staring looking for a combo. It just gets more and more awkward. Like, as I say, I do think it's probably okay in like a Stompy deck. You could even find it maybe in like a green black sacrifice deck, where this might make have the combo in, but you are just an aggro deck that potentially has the access to the combo in some numbers. I could maybe see it, but again, this is not gonna. I wouldn't say this is gonna be a top tier deck. It's definitely gonna be a meme combo, similar to the last 2-card combo, as in the backup combo deck. I would say that's again, it's very similar to that. The removal is so good in Pauper that this ain't surviving.
I think the fact it just gets trumped as well. Like you make an infinitely big guy and then they just block it with a goblin token. But yeah, it's obviously had a lot of hype. A lot of people are high on it. But yeah, ultimately, I don't think it's gonna be the thing. It could be a thing. But like you say, it's more than likely gonna be in a mid-range aggro deck that just has a combo like that it can do at some point.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I will, even though I'm slating this card as a meme combo, I will 100% be trying this combo out, trying it in different shells, all sorts of stuff. Along with the Eternal Witness combo, I'll be trying that as well. There'll be a lot of random infinite colourless, infinite power guys going around. So that is definitely one thing to watch out for, but I don't think this is going to break the metagame for sure. My last card is my favourite card in this entire set. Which is pretty boring, really, because it's not that exciting. But my favourite card is Siege Smash, and that is 1 and a red for an instant with Split Second, which, for those that don't know what Split Second is as long as this spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. And then you get to choose one, destroy target artifact, or target creature gets +3/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. So I don't think this card is going to replace anything major. Like, it's not replacing Cast into the Fire. I don't think it's not going to replace like a Braid or whatever, some sort of revoke existence in your Boros decks or whatever. Split. This is the first card with Split Second in Pauper, I believe.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And the interesting thing, and the only reason why it's my favorite card, is as a Mugwort or Goblin combo player, and that is it. Basically, I feel like this card is probably going to replace a Braid, or Cast into Fire in that slot in Mugwort's particular, because Skirk Prospector is a mana ability. So there's worlds where if you have them all three resolved, you can actually split second combo off, so your opponent can't Cast into the Fire or bolt a guy or whatever in response to your... Like, you can literally... It doesn't have to destroy a relic, or it doesn't have to, whatever. You can literally be, I give my Skirk Prospector +3/+2, combo off. So, I don't... And, again, I don't think this is going to break the game. By far. It's nowhere close. But I just like the fact that there's a lot of matchups where having the 3 resolved... and they're just going to go Electrickery or Cast into Fire or double bolt you guys or whatever, is a common play pattern, where this means that they have to then play around that and interact beforehand, which then is also a bonus for us, because we have a lot more tools like Unearth, like Goblin Matron and all that sort of other stuff that we can then combo off again. Do you know what I mean? Like, it makes it a lot better for the Goblins combo player, which is why I'm really high on this card, for Mogwart in particular. I do think it probably will see play in some sort of Kiln Fiend deck as well. Being able to split second, make your guy survive a bolt is pretty good.
Yeah.
So there is places where I do think it sees play. Split second's a strong mechanic to have in Pauper, and it's a strong mechanic to have access to. I do think it does do other things. Like, it has other game against like Affinity, like being able to hit an artifact, hit a Blood Fountain, hit a Murder Enforcer, all before they can Reckoner's Bargain or activate a Blood Fountain. All that sort of stuff is useful, but I don't think it's going to be... That's the reason to play this card. It's more just an added bonus.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Obviously, like, Split Second is just like a really strong ability. My main thoughts in it is the cards that it would replace, it doesn't do a good enough job at replacing. Like, stuff like a Braid does a lot more in a lot of different matchups than I would say this will do. Like, especially against like stuff like the Mirror or like
sure.
creature decks, White Weenie, Heroic, etc. You'd much rather having a Braid. And then same with Cast into the Fire against stuff like Kuldotha. Like, you're not going to bring this in where you would bring Cast in the Fire in.
Yeah.
But I think that's more of just like a space issue than a card issue. But yeah, it is a cool one. Obviously, Kiln Fiend is the most auto-include for it, in my opinion. But just Kiln Fiend is just not very good at the moment.
Fair enough.
People have said about playing it in Kuldotha. I don't really think that's a viable option. I think it's probably just worse than Smash the Smithereens. Basically, because the 3 damage off the Smash is guaranteed, where this 3 damage you have to attack as well. But yeah, it's a really interesting card. The fact that you can, assuming you've got your 3 Mogwart pieces in play, like cast this and then combo off. Basically, if your opponent's sitting on like a Coffin Purge or a Relic, you can just go right through that with this card. Yeah, it's a cool one. It sort of changes the interaction points of Mogwart if this becomes like a thing that they play. Whereas before you'd maybe wait for them to commit the first day of class before you then like cast down the Skirk Prospector or cast down the Putrid Goblin in response or whatever. You sort of now need to do it earlier, or like in response to the first day of class you have to kill the guy rather than waiting for them to sack it and then trying to get it from the graveyard or whatever. So yeah, it's interesting. I think it'll at least be tested to see if it's good enough. And that in of itself will probably change the pattern which people combat Mogwart. Whether it sticks or not, I am not sure.
Yeah, I do. I think it is another tool. Like, obviously you've got a Braid, you've got Cast in the Fire, you've got this, and even the presence of this in some lists still is enough to potentially change the, as I say, the interaction points.
Yeah,
which
definitely.
is also then good enough in itself, because as we've spoke before, like this changing the interaction points to the weakest point for Mogwarts is the first demonstrated loop. So once you sack it and it comes back and the first A-class trigger goes in the stack and you have 2 1/1s in play, like that is the point where generally you are at your weakest. So changing that to somewhere further back before you demonstrate your first loop, because of the representation of split second, is big enough for me as a Mogwarts player to basically be like, this is good enough to at least have a one of, so to represent that, because you have better times to interact, like do other things. So why I'm really excited for this card.
It is a sweet one.
As a sideboard card as well. How exciting my Modern Horizons 3 is. Do you want to cover the last one?
So the last one is basically a card we've both picked as probably the best card in the set, outside of obviously Cranial Ram.
Yeah.
And it's Refurbished Familiar. It's 3 and a black for an artifact creature zombie rat, which is definitely an interesting creature type. It's a 2/1 with flying. So does that not make it a bat rather than a rat? Anyway, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent who can't, you draw a card. But the main thing about this is it's also got affinity for artifacts.
Because why not?
So a lot of the time it's a single black for a 2/1 flyer that makes the opponent discard a card. If they don't, you draw a card.
Yes.
Obviously, Grixis Affinity is probably a reasonable home for this as a first thought. People play Somber Hoverguard. This is probably just a strictly better Somber Hoverguard. But the main thing that I'm assuming we're both thinking about is stuff like Black-White Blade, where you play a bunch of artifacts so you can capitalize on the affinity, but you also have cards like Core Skyfisher and Glinthawk, so you can just repeatedly like discard a card, discard a card, discard a card, and then late game when they've got no cards, it's also a card draw engine.
Yes.
Which seems pretty nuts.
Seems pretty good to me. For that exact same reason, yeah. Like Grixis Affinity being able to utilize, like, say, 4 of these and then just blood fountain them back is powerful in itself. But obviously, the Black-White Blade engine is definitely where even Mardu have access to synth, and then when they've run out of cards, it's like I have this refurbished rat, which is actually just a better synth, and that's saying something. So this card is definitely my pick and your pick for number 1. Like, this card is probably gonna be getting old very, very quickly. This sort of loop, I can imagine.
It would be interesting. Obviously, Glitters is gone. If we still had Glitters and then this come out, I would imagine we would just have like Black-White Glitters decks now as well. With like this, the Deadly Dispute engine, the Core Skyfishers, and then just like Glitters, audible into Glitters.
Yeah, I can definitely see, because the power of this as well, especially with the Black-White, like I think didn't Mog like the first 2 weeks or something make like a Black-White deck, which was effectively just Blood Fountain, Splurge, aggro into Deadly Dispute and Glitters.
Yeah.
Sort of taking that sort of shell and just jamming this in, being able to just play this as a I will rip your hand apart, I will rip your hand apart, I will rip your hand apart. Oh, you've got no cards. I guess this Glitter's resolving. Like, talk about kicking a person when they're down. Like, they've got no cards in hand. You've sort of got this draw engine. It's just like, oh well, I guess here's my 12/12 refurbished familiar swing. Yeah, definitely. I could definitely see this being an even bigger problem if Glitters was a thing. But powerful card for sure.
Yeah, it's a sweet one. Obviously, Modern Horizons is known for being powerful. We've got a lot of like pushed cards coming into Pauper. But there's a lot of like sweet reprints and stuff like that as well. So it's definitely worth looking out for. There's a lot of cards we haven't mentioned here that probably will see play. And Teasdale might have mentioned them in his top 5 video, or in his honourable mentions at least. So definitely worth checking that out as well.
Yeah, I cover quite a few cards. I do the top 5. I think I like 6 or so honourable mentions. So cover quite a lot of cards, which I think would impact the format in some way, or even impact lesser like less popular decks. So I personally think it's definitely worth checking out. But I could be a bit biased.
Yeah, the format is definitely about to change again.
Yeah, and that's not even including if Cranial Ram is or isn't banned.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if it isn't banned, it's definitely going to change for some craziness. If it is banned, it's still going to change for some less craziness. Yeah, definitely sweet. Would you like to move on to the challenges?
Yeah. So we had some sweet challenges this week. Friday, the 31st of May, was our first one. It was a 32 challenge, fired with 63 players, which is back up again from what we seen, I think, last week when it was quite low. First place was Mono Blue Terror. Second place was Kuldotha. Third was Mono Blue Terror. Fourth was Mogwarts. Fifth was Colgate. Sixth was Grixis Affinity. Seventh and eighth were both Colgate. And then the two near misses, ninth was Mono Red Tron. And 10th was Jeskai Wildfire. So for me, it's a pretty unexpected turn of events. Like, Mono Blue Terror just seems to have returned from absolutely nowhere. I think, for, I guess, spoilers for later on, over the weekend, there was 20 pilots for Mono Blue Terror. And the week before, there was maybe like 3. So it has just sort of exploded to fill maybe that aggro void. Obviously, we essentially had Kuldotha and no other aggro decks. But yeah, it's sweet to see it come back. It all seems to be on like the Boomerang for spiky version. That's very much just like, I'm going to hard commit to going off as fast as possible. Also, I'll Boomerang you on turn 2 to set you a turn behind me. Which is interesting.
I think, to be fair, when you think that the decks that are obviously pretty like well positioned, or what you would think the metagame looks like, obviously the Boomerang thing is probably good against 2 out of the 3. Like, Kuldotha's obviously still up there as one of the bigger decks. And then even if you are on the draw, the fact that Colgate and Grixis Affinity run a high number of tap lands means that you can
about to mention that.
You can like mitigate that, and it just seems like a really strong option.
Yeah, when the metagame is this sort of control slanted, with like every control deck just plays loads of tap lands, Colgate, Grixis, Jeskai Wildfire. If you're just going as fast as possible and then setting them back turns, or like force spiking the turn 2 play that they can't pay for because they've played a tap land, it's pretty big. Seems like a really good shout.
Yeah, seems like a solid option at the moment. Like, obviously, still having multiple angles, you can still sort of play a control-ish game. You can then go hyper aggro. Obviously, with the mono blue side of things, it's definitely the most aggressive terror.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I guess on the control side of things, obviously a triple top 8 from Colgate as well. Which again on the pilot numbers over the weekend was massively increased. I think it was 24 pilots. And Colgates we usually see like 8 to 10, 8 to 12 maybe on a good day. So yeah, people have clicked on that Colgate is extremely good at the moment.
Yeah, it's a strong deck. Obviously, it's not the most exciting of decks to play. It's very out there and obvious what its gameplay patterns is. It's got some play to it, don't get me wrong. It's obviously got powerful engines with Brainstorm and Squadron Hawk, but it's definitely popular and definitely has a good Kuldotha matchup generally, especially with the Outlaw Medic and the Sacred Cat. Looking at this, all 3 lists were on Outlaw Medic.
Yeah.
So
it seems to just have become a mainstay now, really. Interestingly, one of the lists even played Weather the Storms in the sideboard.
Yes.
So just to improve the Kuldotha match even more. But yeah, it definitely seems like a solid deck to be on at the moment.
Anything else you want to touch on before I touch on the spicy one? The elephant in the room.
Go for it. It's definitely a sweet one.
So 9th place, we have the return of the king. That is Mono Red Tron. This deck is Floyza played it quite a while back. An initial Mono Red Tron running 4 towers and 3 of each other Tron land. This is not the case. They're on the whole 12. They've also changed their list slightly. They're running Campfire. They're running Maelstrom Colossus. and they're running
It
Bitter
is.
Reunion.
It is, to be fair, this list is very different from that initial one.
Yeah, yeah.
Even the burn, they've cut quite a lot of the burn to fit these like bigger threats in. There's no, what's the Monarch guy called? Commodore. There's no Commodores. There's only 2 bolts. There's no fire bolts. And the Rolling Thunders have been split with some Karavec torches as well. It is an interesting change.
Yeah, I'm actually a big. To be fair, it's more the mono red Tron deck from like Floizer was definitely more like a mono red control deck that had access to Tron and the aggro. I'm gonna boredom party you to death or whatever. Yeah. And that was like a great turning point for them. But this seems very much like Monster Tron to me. It's just I'm going to play my Tron lands and I'm going to stay alive with Campfire and Candy Trail until I get there, and then I'm gonna splurge a bunch of big guys. I'm hopefully gonna Maelstrom Colossus into Boredom Party into Self Assembler, but if not, I will bolt and Sprite to save some time, and then I'm gonna Caravex torch it to death.
As weird as it sounds, this mono red Tron is more Tron than the other one.
Yeah.
The other one, you didn't really care about ramping that much. Like, it basically capped out at 6 for a boredom party, right?
Yeah.
Obviously with Rolling Thunders that you can scale, but this one is like full on 4 Maelstrom Colossus. Obviously it's got the full set of Tron as well, which sort of leans that way more. That it's I'm gonna get Tron online. I'm gonna cast a lot of big bombs.
Yeah. The other interesting thing that I do like is the 4 Bitter Reunion in the main, which leans further into that as well. Obviously, it is some card selection, obviously with the discard draw 2, but also being able to sack it to give your creatures haste for 1 mana, which you will have 1 mana lying around in Tron. So being able to just Maelstrom Colossus into an Oliphant, just literally just give it haste, swing for a lot of damage. Like giving your Maelstrom Colossus haste and trample from the Oliphant is pretty good. For sure. The one thing that I do like is moving to Caravex Torch as well to Rolling Thunder. Obviously with Glitter's gone, the other sort of aggro decks being Kuldotha, Madness, and then Mono Blue Terror. 2 of those 3 decks sort of get cleaned up with the Breath Weapons and the 4 Candy Trail, 3 Campfire. And then that leaves basically you've got Caravex Torch to sort of help against the control matchups, being able to can't be countered, costing 2 more on the stack is a pretty relevant thing.
I think that is the main thing, is there's just so much more control now that the Torch is obviously just better against control, but also the just going bigger plan makes more sense. Because you've just got so much more time, you can just go over the control decks.
Yeah. Definitely. I really like this list. Even the sideboard's pretty sweet. Like, obviously, you've got Boulder Branch Golem, which again is another thing, which I'm quite surprised it's not even in the main, to be honest. But I guess, obviously, with all the control, you just kind of want the life gain post board with the other stuff. Then you've got the standard 4 Red Elemental Blasts, 3 Relics is fairly stocking probably these decks. It's definitely oh crap, what do I need? Graveyard hit, I just jam some Relics in, that'll do.
Yeah.
2 Casting Fires in a Crimson Fleet, and then 2 Fiery Cannonades in the side. This is definitely an interesting sideboard choice for me, because you probably want Breath Weapon against Kuldotha, and they tend to run quite a bit of Pirates.
Yeah. Obviously this one runs a lot less Pirates. So it's not going to be hitting itself with the Breath Weapon either. So it is a bit odd that there is that split of 2 Breath Weapons in the main and then 2 Cannonades in the board. I was more sort of wondering whether it's like, oh well, if I'm not against Kuldotha, I'll switch to Cannonade and bring in my Commodore or something like that. But it's an odd one. I don't really get that split.
It could be a card availability option. Obviously, Breath Weapon's quite expensive, but you get
Magic Online.
But you got given 2 Breath Weapons. You're given 2 of like a lot of commons for some reason.
That could make sense with obviously the 4 Red Blasts being Red Blasts rather than Pyroblast as well.
That could be a reason, but I don't. Other than that, I actually don't know the reason for the 2-2 split. Because to me, any deck that you really want to go wide in, you might as well run Breath Weapon over Cannonade, to me.
Yeah.
Unless you think some Elves player is going to run Avenging Hunter and you're like, I got to make sure I double Cannonade there, Avenging Hunter. But sweet deck regardless. The main deck is definitely interesting. Really do like this. Definitely will be giving this a spin. And it probably makes me happier that Ancient Grudge is probably taking a lull now due to Glitters being gone. So it makes your Maelstrom Colossus that little bit better. Especially with Bitter Reunion, you most likely, if they're running Dust to Dusts and Revokes, you're most likely going to be able to at least get in for 7 with your Maelstrom Colossus before he gets Dust to Dusted.
Yeah, it is a sweet one, and it's nice to see it being so different to like the first iteration as well. They're like almost 2 distinct decks.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
100%. Definitely see what you're saying. I think other than that, the rest of as we've covered Corgate, obviously there's only one Grixis Affinity list in the top 8, which I guess is sort of to be expected, but when you look at the sideboards for these decks that are in the top 8, not a lot of massively like hated towards Grixis Affinity.
One of the Corgates has no artifact removal at all in the 75.
Yeah.
And even the others are sort of on like 2 Dust to Dusts. Maybe a couple of Gorilla Shamans, something like that.
Yeah.
They're not like gone are the days of just 4 Dust to Dusts in all the white decks.
Yeah, that's what I find really odd. And then also the transition for the Friday, we had, it's a most actually as well. We had 12 pilots on the Friday playing Grixis Affinity, and that converted to a bunch of other decks not running much artifact hit, and then 1 Grixis Affinity in the top 8. Seems rather odd to me. But yeah.
I think overall, to be fair, Grixis just didn't have a good weekend.
No.
Which is surprising given everyone just assumed, this is going to be the best deck again. But yeah, even as you said, like there's only that one in the top 8 is the only one in the top 16 as well. The next one is like 19th or something like that. So it just did not convert at all.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Especially considering last week was a pretty big weekend for Grixis Affinity. It's not like there's, which I half expected a sort of downwards weekend for Grixis Affinity, but I also expected an increase in sideboard hit. But it's just like not the case. Yeah, I guess maybe the Guardian of the Guild Pact just gets the job done, and you're just like, I will make it big enough that your colourless guys are not doing anything. Don't know.
That's a bold claim.
I don't know, no idea. But yeah, it's there definitely must be something. Maybe Outlaw Medic's just secretly OP against Grixis Affinity. That's maybe
Grixis Affinity just is actually not that good.
No, that's not the case. Can't be that. Can't be that. Would you like to move on to Saturday? Or do you want to cover anything else?
Yeah. So Saturday the 1st had 53 players. First place was Corgate. Second was Black Red Madness. Third was Mono Blue Terror. Fourth was Kuldotha. Fifth was Mono Blue Terror. Sixth was Jeskai Wildfire. Seventh was Kuldotha. And 8th was Dredge. And then the 2 near misses. 9th was Corgate. And 10th was another copy of Mono Blue Terror. So yeah, another really strong showing for Mono Blue Terror, proving that the Friday is definitely not just a fluke. Black Red Madness again cropping up as another aggro deck in contention. So although we lost the blue white glitters, there is definitely still more than Kuldotha that you can play if you want to play an aggressive game plan. And then obviously the first place Corgate, there's only one Corgate in the top 8. Obviously the next one's in 9th. But yeah, still just proving it is a super strong deck at the moment.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think Strands is definitely doing a lot of the heavy lifting for a lot of the matchups, but I do also think the deck in general is a really good, it has a really good mid-range control plan against the other decks. So I'm not surprised that the deck's just a strong contender. Also a note that this deck very much did not leave home without its Dust to Dusts, with the full 4 on the side. I also do like the fact that they're on 5 pyro effects, 1 pyro, 4 rebs, and only 4 blue elemental blasts. It just makes me happy. Don't know why. Giving them blue decks the respect that they deserve.
Well, when Mono Blue Terror's one of the most played decks.
Yep, that is for sure.
Interestingly, something that we've talked about before that sort of never come to fruition has come to fruition. So for once, we are correct. The Black-Red Madness deck that came second has 3 highway robberies in the main.
I was actually just about to mention it's interesting that it's got the 3 highway robberies. The only thing I do disagree with is the fact that they've cut a Vampire's Kiss.
Yeah, that's fair.
But other than that, I do generally like Highway Robbery is a surprisingly good card, and it does a lot of work in this deck. I've been impressed with it when I played it, and yeah, I'd run more if I was you. But don't cut Vampire's Kiss. That card's probably the best card in the deck.
I think this deck, to be fair, I am probably going to try this at the next F&M because it just looks sweet.
It's a sweet one. My only thing is, I do wonder because I know Stompy was talking about a list that doesn't run artifacts, like doesn't run the artifact lands and then doesn't run Tomb Raider. I found it really and then obviously no Galv Blast because of that. I do find it quite interesting as a potential. Like you do lose a lot of burst potential because Galv Blast obviously does a lot of damage, and so does Tomb Raider. Mm-hmm. But obviously it makes you a lot stronger to the artifact hit. So it is interesting thought, like a thought process to be able to, if that is possible.
Yeah, I guess it depends what you're trying to play around. Like you're still just gonna get murked by a Gorilla Shaman because all your cards still just make blood tokens, but you get murked a little less hard by Gorilla Shaman than you otherwise would.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think Tomb Raider's just so good in a red aggressive shell. It's hard to justify not playing it. Would be my thought.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind that for sure. But just an interesting thing for food for these decks. Obviously, you've got Jagged Barrens, which is actually a reasonable land that you don't have to run the red black life gain land anymore. But play Highway Robbery. Highway Robbery's a good card.
It's a sweet one.
The only other thing I think I want to mention was, I guess, to touch on Dredge.
It wasn't a particularly interesting Dredge list.
It wasn't a particularly interesting Dredge list, but it is become more common stay that they are on 2 pylons and 4 land druids. Obviously, we do end up seeing that sort of flexibility, but I do think that's sort of come a mainstay now.
Yeah, I think honestly now, I would say this is a stock Dredge list. It has obviously the flex, like if you expect loads of aggro, you probably swap the Exhums and the Gnaws from the main to the side. I still think 3 Acorn Harvest is too many. You should probably be on 2. But other than that, yeah, I would say this now is the stock list for Dredge.
Settled on 14 lands. Look at that.
We got there eventually. We tried everything from 12 to 17 or something like that. Yep,
pretty much. Yeah, definitely a sweet one. I guess my final thing is obviously a lot of mono blue terror in the top 10. We got third, 5th, and 10th, and they are all on the boomerang list, right? From memory.
Yeah. They're all fairly similar as well. There's only a couple of cards different. Interestingly, on the Friday, I can't remember what the card's called. One of them ran the unblockable card
Artful Dodge.
Dark Ascension. That's the one, Artful Dodge. None of these do. They're all just a lot more straightforward. One's on Mystic, I think, and two are on Mystic. One isn't. But apart from that, they're all fairly similar.
I'm not against at least one Mystic or something in the main. It's a very good out to a lot of the control decks that if you do end up getting the game long. But I do agree generally that you obviously want to execute the other plan first. Don't heavily rely on Mystic. I also do like Jace's Phantasm. That is
as a sideboard.
Sweet sideboard card. For the mirror, for other decks that are gonna for Dredge.
Yeah. It's legit against Dredge. It can't be chumped and just hits them for 5 from turn 2.
Yes. Seems like a fairly solid option. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool one. It is nice to see it come back.
Yeah.
And it does fill the second aggro slot really well, I think, as a really strong aggressive deck, but also if you want to beat it, you can. So, like same as Kuldotha. If you want to beat Kuldotha, you can beat Kuldotha. If you want to beat Mono Blue Terror, play some Pyroblast, pack your Pyroblast, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, it's good for the format.
Yeah, I agree. Especially the good thing that I do like about these aggro decks of choice like Kuldotha and Terra is not only are they beatable, but also they are very much they're all within a general game plan. So like if you are wanting to be controlled, you do get splash damage playing the Mono Blue Terror because obviously you're packing Pyroblasts. You know, they do receive a lot, and same with the aggro decks. Like if you want to beat other go wide strategies, Breath Weapon is a solid answer anyways. So is Drown. That they actually are affecting your game plan. Where the big thing was Kuldotha was big, so was Glitters, and they both required polar opposite hit, and they pretty much didn't have much splash damage, like being separate. So like Breath Weapon wasn't that great against Glitters compared to it is against Kuldotha. So it makes it a lot easier to have a more predictive metagame and more focused sideboard, I think, without being spread too wide, which is great. Great for the format generally. Moving to Sunday?
Yeah. So Sunday the 2nd, we had 68 players, and obviously this is the 64 challenge. First place was Blue Red Scred. Second place was Colgate. I believe they split the finals. I think I seen Spock tweet before. Third place was Gardens with a red splash once again. Fourth was Ponza. Fifth was Mono Blue Terror. Sixth was Mogwart. Seventh was Kuldotha. And eighth, making its first appearance this week, Blue Black Fate. And then the two near misses, 9th was Boros Synth, and 10th was Grixis Affinity. I guess my first thing is, once again, we see Colgate and Mono Blue Terror both in the top. Kuldotha as well. Like, Kuldotha's having a quietly, like, just really good week. It's just in every top 8.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is sort of, I guess, back to the normal operations of just Kuldotha being one of the better decks.
Yeah.
But yeah, a really good show from Colgates this week and from Mono Blue Terror.
Interestingly enough, though, Sunday was the least represented for Kuldotha. Looking at when I did a quick search, there was only 3 pilots on the Sunday, and still managed to converted one of them to top 8. Yeah, one of them to the top 8.
Yeah, 7th. Yeah. That is really though, actually, for Kuldotha. That's surprising.
I'm gonna double check myself now. You have me doubting myself.
One was 14th as well, so the conversion rate there was pretty good. If there was only three pilots,
there may have been. There's 4 pilots. Sorry, 4 pilots.
Yeah, even still, that's it's super low for Kuldotha. But yeah, two being in the top 16 out of 4 is pretty impressive.
Yeah. My first thing is obviously Gardens on the red splash.
Yeah.
It's very stock, I'd almost say now. The red splash is so free for the Gardens list running obviously the troll. I just think you might as well, for how many blue decks there is, having access to Pyroblast is pretty good. Having access to Ancient Grudge against Grixis Affinity, like, it's not going to exile like Oof does, or shuffle in the lands like the Glamour does, but you also get to hit the crucial cards, because a lot of the time I think the game plan comes down to kill all your threats and make sure they can't come back with Blood Fountain.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you just want to hit those Blood Fountains, basically.
Yeah. So hitting the relevant things, and then being able to make sure that the game goes long enough where you can finish them with Avenger Hunter seems like a good place to be. And you might as well just run I just think run the red. It's the best option to be. The good thing I don't know if I like it, but the good thing I do like to see is that Oof is getting more limelight now that Glitters isn't really a thing. Isn't a thing. Because you get the exile effect and you get a 2/2 body. It's just an upgrade in Gardens in particular over the Glamour.
Yeah.
A much better card.
And the sorcery speed, like you said, doesn't really matter as much now that Glitters is not going to just bonk you. Yeah, it's a sweet one. I think at the time when Eldraine come out, it was one of our picks for this is a really strong card and it should see a lot of sideboard play, but just never really came to fruition until now. But it's sweet to see.
But I guess that just shows obviously how circumstantial cards are. Like some cards are better than others generally, but it's all in a vacuum. But when you actually look at it from a metagame perspective, like cards get different playability, and it's great that obviously the card evaluation shows that Oof is actually a strong card, as you can see, but it just takes some time in the right metagame for it to come back. Sure. Interesting enough, there wasn't many Gardens either. I think there was one on Friday, one on Saturday, and then like 3 or something on the Sunday. So nice to see Nick Norman repping it still getting in the top 8.
The 4th place Ponza deck is something that I think we did touch on last week, but just highlighting again here is still cutting the spreads. So there is no, other than blow your lands up, there's no main deck interaction. It's just I'm gonna ramp, blow your lands up, and jam a load of bombs. Even in the sideboard, there's no like spreads or spot removal in the sideboard. And it sort of shows once again that now Glitters is gone, these decks can change how they interact with format. With Glitters still being about, like, you just couldn't cut spreads from Ponza at all. Like, you would just die instantly. Yeah. But now there's not really anything in particular that you're that bothered about spreading, so you can just get rid of them.
Yeah, it's sweet to see. I do like the fact that it's just basically, this is my game plan. I'm gonna roll with it. Straying away from the game plan did hinder it a bit. Obviously, you can easily cascade into a spread at a wrong time and things like that. Now you just, like, your hits are all still, like, okay. Like, even if you hit a Wild Growth or a Utopia Sprawl, that gives you more mana next turn to potentially be able to play a 3-mana guy and a 6-mana guy. Like, it's not out the question. So, and just having, like, no non-hits is the real key here, I think.
Yeah, obviously the density is a lot higher. We've seen spread in the past, like, having to have like relics and stuff in the main, as well as the spread. So being able to cut like those cards and just essentially putting more creatures in, I think it added a couple of Jewel Thieves and a Crimson Commodore. Just as better hits to cascade into is good.
Yeah, 100%. What was my last thought was the Boros Synth player.
Another deck that we haven't really seen. Yeah.
So obviously affected by the Glitters ban, and most people knew it was just going to go back to being Boros Synth, as opposed to the Boros Synth with the Glitters. It's good that it's made its way here, but it's also quite a strange list. It runs like a Bushwhacker in the main.
And 3 main deck relics.
It's a strange one. I'm happy to see the Abraded Bluffs, which, again, I'm unsure if... I was very much for Abraded Bluffs when they were Glitters. I still think I am on that side as opposed to the Windscarred Crag, even post Glitters. But I definitely think you can build your deck in a way. So, like, if this deck didn't have Barb Batterfist and the Bushwhacker, like the more aggressive slant, and you've went more, I don't know, Dawnbringer Cleric-y heavy or whatever, I could maybe see the Windscarred Crag being the other option. I know it's very, very, very slight, and you're talking nuances, but
I think for me at the moment, just the fact that there's so much more control, and like you're not that dead in the water to the aggro decks anyway. Like Kuldotha, you've got a bunch of X2s to block with, as well as like Lembasses and stuff. Whereas the Abraded Bluffs against control with stuff like Core Skyfisher, it's gonna add up and it's gonna like edge you over that line, I think.
But yeah, definitely sweet to see. Like, I do like these desert lands, the crime lands or whatever you want to call them. They are. I didn't name them.
I think this deck in particular was definitely packing for the. Oh look, there's been loads of mono blue terror. Obviously it has the 3 relics in the main, but then also has like cop blue in the sideboard.
Yes.
It's like, well, all right, we know what you want to be then.
and 3 Destroy Evils and 3 Pyroblasts.
Mm.
And the fourth
relic.
Yeah, definitely not messing.
Yeah.
I guess also the finally Mogged ended up breaking through and getting 10th, I guess.
Mm.
Just missing out. Interesting list with 3 Titan Blades in Grixis Affinity in the main deck. Yeah, this list is pretty crazy.
Maybe again a shout for all the terror going about.
Yeah. At least it shows that obviously over the weekend you can gradually see like, oh, this is going to be big. This one, like maybe we should respect these decks. And it's cool to see. It's cool to see like the weekend adaptation to the metagame a little bit. Like obviously like you can tell that Mono Blue Terrace had a good weekend, good representation. Let's have some sort of plan for that.
Yeah. I think this Grixis list as well, it's a lot less bitty than a lot of the ones we've seen. It seems like a very straightforward Grixis list. You've got obviously your 10 draw twos. You've just got 4 stars, 4 Wellsprings. You're not like splitting them between Candy Trails and Lembuses and all that stuff. 4 Frogmite, 4 Murring Forces. No, just like random one-off Somber Hoverguard, a couple of Gear 6 7s, whatever. It's just very, very straightforward.
Yeah, that's what you see. And I guess my actual final conversation on this is I just want to note that the Mogwarts pilot in 6th is not Hamuda. That was all. That was all I wanted to say. That I think they are playing Hamuda's latest list at the top forward on the Friday or Saturday. With the extra duress instead of the Pilferer.
Yeah.
And then going on the I really hate Affinity, Mass Vandal, triple Casting the Fire, triple Gorilla Shaman sideboard. But other than that which is Hamuda's list, this is not Hamuda. Which
shout out to Bocky Flocky for not being Hamuda.
Shout out to Bocky Flocky for not being Hamuda. Just to show that this deck can be piloted by other people.
Yeah.
Just saying. Sweet to see. Yeah. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's it from me.
Moving on to, we will touch on the Casting Commons event, the Battle of the Bolts. The top 8 for the event is first place was Pingaburn. Second place was Mogwarts. Third place was Jeskai Wildfire. Fourth place was Blue Red Scred. Fifth place was Dredge. Sixth place was Elves. Seventh place was Jeskai Wildfire. Eighth place was Kuldotha. And the 2 near misses were Elves and Corgate. Where do you want to start?
I guess it was pretty apt that Pingaburn won the battle for the bolts and got some fancy bolts. It was a very odd Pingaburn list. They had like gutter snipes and stuff in it as well. But I think it basically just got perfect matchups in the Swiss. I know I beat it in the Swiss, but I think I was the only loss. Obviously, I've got a bunch of Not of the Bones. But yeah, just pretty decent matchups in the Swiss, and then in the top 8 playoffs immediately queuing into Blue Red Scred that has essentially no life gain. It was definitely a good dice roll for the Pingaburn opponent.
Yeah, it was an interesting event. Like I said, we got quite a few drop on the day, but we ended up with not the worst like player representation. I think we ended up with like 14, 15 players or something. So it wasn't a massive event, but still good to obviously get the northern side of the UK together, which was great. Ended up having 5 rounds and then a cut to top 4, which ended up being I was first in the Swiss and ended up second, and then I think after that, bar me and the Pingaburn switching, the top 4 remained the same, like as in the Swiss. But it was cool. Obviously, we had two elves, 2 Jeskai Wildfire, and then a lot of singleton decks right after that. So was great all round. Obviously, Jeskai Wildfire is a great choice if you take it into a sort of blind meta game that you don't really know. It's got generally the tools to beat whatever you want it to beat. But ended up obviously still both of them in the top 8, which was great. The Pinger Burn list was quite interesting. My finals game against it was quite interesting. I think I won game 1, and then game 2, I was on 20. They had a gutter sniping player and 4 cards in hand, I think. Something like that. 4 or 5, something like that. And I was on 20. And then I died. That is basically all I can tell you. It's like, last thing I remember was I got a bolt to the face for 5. I got a bolt to the face for 5. I got a bolt to the face for 5. And then I think I got fire blasted or something along them lines. And I got another bolt to the face.
It was a lot of damage.
Yeah. I just died out of nowhere. But yeah, was cool event. Cool to see that the top 4 was still an interesting top 4. Obviously, the Ping and Burn just sort of rammed through everyone. But yeah, that's all I got. Play Mogwarts.
Yeah.
That's good.
No, yeah. It was sweet. Obviously, a big shout out to the Newcastle guys for coming over. Yeah. If you're in Newcastle, they run their Pauper leagues every Thursday night in Travellerman, I believe. Mm-hmm. They're getting pretty solid numbers now, like I think 14 to 15 players weekly, which is really good. So yeah, definitely go and support them if you're in the area.
Yeah, it's definitely well run, and they collect quite a lot. They're often posting the UK Facebook group, obviously all their results and all the standings and stuff like that. So it's really, really cool. Go support them, keep an eye on them, even if you are going to be in the area over that week, like even if you're traveling for work or whatever. I recommend checking them out on the Thursday because it is a great league, really, this whole system. And hopefully they're running a Pauper tournament themselves soon. Who knows? We can try. Crossed. We can try. Yeah, the only thing I've got is definitely play Mogwarts. Deck's good. Not biased, honest. Move on to shoutouts.
Yeah, go for it.
So a shout out to Kirby for the data. Obviously great to see that he's still pulling out the weekly data, obviously for all the win percentages, deck pilots, all that sort of stuff. Congrats to all the grinders. That top 8, top 10, like obviously we had Mogged, we've had a Muda, we've had Twister66 from memory. We had Calves, I think, on Corgate one day. Shout out to obviously Bocky Flocky for not being Hamuda. And finally, the big shout out that I would like to highlight is Brivenix. Top 8'd all 3 challenges.
It's pretty mega, that, like.
That is pretty, like, big stuff. Like, 2 of them was with Mono Blue, 1 of them was a first. And 1 of them was an 8th, but with Blue Black Fair. I can't remember what the other Terror was. I probably was like 3rd or 5th. Yeah, it was 3rd or 5th on the Saturday. Pretty incredible stuff. Not only a tear with just 1 deck, but 2. Yeah, sweet to see. Keep it up. Want to move on to hot takes?
Yeah. My first hot take from last week was that Jeskai Wildfire and Grixis Affinity would continue to perform, and shows that the bridges should have been banned a long time ago. Didn't really happen. Like, we've seen a couple of them, but in general there was like a pretty low conversion rate for both decks.
Yeah, but point still stands. Mine was White Weenie will pick up next week and convert to a top 8 because it was a solid dust deck. That definitely didn't happen. We had 3 pilots all weekend. One came 41st, one came 26th, which the 26th was obviously J-Waves. Best performing mono white player, clearly. And then the final one was 35th place. Just wasn't happening.
Not a week for White Weenie.
Not a week for White Weenie.
I think this take might be one of those delayed takes. Like when Thraben Charm from Modern Horizons comes out, I think that's when the return of White Weenie.
Well, I look forward to it.
My last hot take from last week was that Black Red Madness would continue to make top 8s, as 1 ping land is all it needed to become a deck again. And it did top 8 on a Saturday, but it wasn't just 1 ping land, it was also 3 highway robberies.
Double win. We converted them. There must be a listener. My final hot take was that Pestilence will top 10 again next week. This didn't happen because I am actually confused by this because, first of all, there was only 2 copies of Pestilence registered over the whole weekend, and it was in one mid-range Pestilence deck, which came 52nd on the Sunday. But the actual control version that we highlighted last week, I am definitely convinced. I recorded a league with it. It probably will be live already. And that deck is actually really strong right now. I am not even joking you. That deck is powerful. Against all these control decks, against Corgate, against Affinity, all that sort of stuff, it definitely is a strong deck to play. It's a dust-to-dust deck, which gives you game against Grixis Affinity. Pestilence is just being able to answer Grixis. Like, one card can deal with pretty much the whole board of Corgate, of Terra, of Grixis Affinity. This card is strong. And you've got Titan Blade. I'm telling you now, this deck is strong. Spoilers. I did well. But yeah, so that confused me. Play Pestilence.
And Mogwart. Hot takes for next week. My first one is that we'll mix it up again. We won't see a top 8 that has all 3 Mono Blue Terra, Kuldotha, and Corgate. As all 3 top 8s this week had all 3 of those decks in.
One of them's going to get hated out. One of them. And it'll probably be Terra.
Die a death.
It'll be Terra. Don't know
Everyone's going to play Ponza and Corgate's just going to die. That's the problem.
Hey, I'd prefer that. Well, for 2 reasons. 1, because screw Corgate, and 2, because my hot take for the next week is Ponza will pick up next week. Hopefully it'll convert into multiple top 8s. But there was only 10 pilots over the weekend playing Ponza. And I would not be surprised if that was to increase, going back to the showcase or whatever it was last week, which was a very highly played deck.
I think in general, to be fair, like that 10 pilots is an increase from what we have seen for past weeks. But yeah, I can definitely see it continuing to rise. And my last one is that Corgate and Kuldotha will now basically battle it out and become the most played deck. We had for a long time that everyone knew Corgate was good, but it would get like 5 pilots. But now it very much seems like everyone knows Corgate's good and they're prepared to play Corgate. So yeah, I believe this week they were pretty even. If not, Corgate was maybe higher. 23 pilots for Kuldotha, 24 for Corgate. So yeah, I imagine that'll be on similar rates next week as well.
For sure. My final take is that Blue-Black Terra will rise in a bit of popularity. Maybe I'm having a bit of copium here. Who knows? But I think it's a good choice to fight the mirror, as in the Mono Blue Terra and the Blue-Black Terra sort of matchup, because you've got, not only do you have access to making guys bigger, you've got access to snuff out, cast down, all that sort of stuff, which is just better answers. Even Edicts, just great answers to those sort of decks. And then also it does have, or generally has, a okay-ish Kuldotha matchup of how many unexpected fangs can you see. So yeah, don't know. Just think that's going to rise. There was only 2, for reference, there was only 2 pilots on the Friday. And after that, there was zero Blue-Black Terra. Which
Mono Blue Truth.
Mono Blue Truth. As much as I do like Boomerang. Oh. Would you like to add anything else?
No, that's it from me for this week.
Sweet. Thank you guys all for listening. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please don't forget to share it with your friends, your family, your local pauper community, and even your train conductor. Damn that privatization. That is all from us at Casting Commons. Until next time, and don't forget to stay hydrated. Peace!
Bye.